Live in the present and free yourself from the past. Buddhist wisdom. Life is often described as a continuous stream, but most of us rarely stand within that stream, fully aware of its flow. We live caught between what has already happened and what may yet occur. The human mind has a natural tendency to wander into the past, reliving memories, replaying regrets, or even clinging to old glories. At the same time, it projects itself into the future, building expectations, imagining outcomes, or constructing fears. This constant oscillation prevents us from experiencing the one thing that truly belongs to us, the present moment. Buddhist wisdom has long reminded us that liberation is not about erasing the past or denying the future, but about releasing the chains that bind us to them and learning to fully inhabit the present. The present moment is the only reality we ever touch directly. The past exists in memory, shaped and reshaped by perception. The future exists in imagination, never arriving as we picture it. Yet the present is often treated as a stepping stone, a mere bridge between what was and what will be. We rarely pause to inhabit it, to savor its depth. Buddhism teaches that this neglect of the present is the root of much of our suffering. The mind's clinging to what has passed, and its craving for what may come creates restlessness, dissatisfaction, and anxiety. Freedom begins when we awaken to the immediacy of now. Living in the present, however, does not mean amnesia about the past nor apathy about the future. Instead, it calls us to hold them with wisdom. The past can offer lessons, but not prisons. The future can invite preparation, but not obsession. In Buddhist practice, mindfulness, the cultivation of present moment awareness, becomes the doorway through which we walk out of regret and anxiety into peace. When we free ourselves from the compulsive grip of past and future, we discover a vast space of clarity, compassion, and joy in the here and now. This teaching is particularly urgent in the modern world. Surrounded by constant distractions, rapid technological change, and endless demands, people find their attention fractured. Anxiety levels are at unprecedented highs. Depression often stems from being trapped in narratives of the past, and stress results from projecting catastrophes into the future. To live in the present is not an abstract philosophy, but a vital medicine for our psychological, emotional, and spiritual well-being. This work explores how Buddhist wisdom guides us toward this liberation. We will examine the causes of our attachment to the past, the illusions that bind us to memory, and the emotional weight that can paralyze us. We will reflect on how Buddhist teachings, such as impermanence and non-self, provide insight into why clinging to the past is futile. We will also explore practical ways to cultivate presence, meditation, mindfulness of breath, awareness of the body, and compassionate engagement with others. By integrating these teachings into daily life, we learn to loosen the hold of memory, fear, and projection. Our journey will unfold across 5 major explorations, each diving deeply into a dimension of this theme. First, we will consider why the human mind is so drawn to the past and the psychological mechanisms that keep us there. Second, we will reflect on the Buddhist understanding of impermanence and non-self as antidotes to clinging. Third, we will explore the practice of mindfulness as a living path to presence. Fourth, we will confront the illusions of the future and the suffering they generate. Finally, we will envision what it means to live fully in the present, not as a fleeting slogan, but as a way of being that transforms how we see ourselves, others, and life itself. This exploration is not merely theoretical, it is meant to invite you into direct reflection. As you read, you are encouraged to pause, breathe, and observe how these words resonate within your own experience. Consider the ways you have been bound by memory or enslaved by expectation. Notice how it feels when your awareness comes back, even briefly, to the present moment. In doing so, you are not just learning ideas, you are tasting freedom. Let us now begin with the first step on this journey, understanding why the mind clings so fiercely to the past and why letting go is both difficult and liberating. The weight of the past and the chains of memory. The past often feels like an undeniable force shaping who we are. Our memories provide us with identity, continuity, and meaning. Without memory, we would be unmoored, unable to recall who we are or how we arrived at this moment. Yet as much as memory sustains us, it can also imprison us. Many people spend their lives caught in cycles of regret, resentment, nostalgia, or longing, chained to what has already dissolved into time. To live in the present, Buddhist wisdom teaches, we must first recognize the power and peril of memory. The Buddha often described memory and thought as fabrications, mental constructions shaped by perception, desire, and ignorance. Neuroscience today confirms what Buddhist psychology intuited centuries ago. Memory is not an exact recording of events, but a dynamic reconstruction. Each time we recall the past, we reshape it slightly, influenced by our current emotions, beliefs, and expectations. What we cling to as the past is often more a story we tell ourselves than an objective reality. Yet, we allow these stories to dominate our sense of self and dictate our feelings. Consider how regret works. We replay past actions, words we spoke harshly, opportunities we missed, mistakes we made, and we wish we could undo them. But no matter how many times we turn them over in our minds, the past does not change. The clinging only deepens our suffering. Regret becomes a mental loop, keeping us from engaging fully in the present because part of our energy is always turned backward. Resentment operates similarly. Someone wronged us, and though the moment is long gone, we keep the wound alive by rehearsing it in thought. We become prisoners of our anger, even though the other person may have moved on or even forgotten the event entirely. Nostalgia, though often sweeter, can be equally binding. We idealize a time in our past, a relationship, a stage of youth, a place we once lived, and we long to return to it. This longing subtly poisons the present, because we compare what is with what was, and the present always comes up lacking. We become unable to see the beauty in now, because our gaze is always cast behind us. The Buddha's teaching on impermanence speaks directly to this. All conditioned things arise and pass away. To cling to what has passed is to resist the very nature of reality. Buddhism offers the image of a burning house to describe clinging. Imagine you are holding onto the beams of a house engulfed in flames. The house cannot be saved. Its destruction is inevitable. Yet, the tighter you cling, the more you burn with it. The past is like this. It cannot be preserved exactly as it was. Clinging to it ensures that we suffer its loss again and again. To release it is not to deny that it happened, but to recognize that it is no longer here. The present moment alone is the house that still stands, the ground beneath our feet. Another dimension of being trapped in the past is identity. We often define ourselves by what has happened to us. Traumas, successes, failures, roles, and labels all become part of our narrative self. But Buddhism invites us to question this attachment. The doctrine of non-self, anatta, teaches that there is no permanent, unchanging essence behind our identity. The self is a process, a flow of causes and conditions, not a fixed entity. To bind ourselves to a past version of who we were is to mistake a temporary formation for an eternal truth. This creates unnecessary suffering as we resist the possibility of change and growth. Why then do we cling so tightly to the past? Part of it is fear. The present is uncertain and the future is unknown. The past, even with its pains, feels familiar. It gives us a sense of solidity, something to grasp. Another reason is habit. The mind develops grooves of thought, neural pathways that make it easier to return to familiar stories than to rest in the uncharted stillness of the present. This is why meditation is often described as retraining the mind. It helps us build new grooves that orient us toward awareness rather than rumination. The Buddha's path to liberation begins with right view, seeing reality clearly. To free ourselves from the past, we must first see it as it is. impermanent, reconstructed, and not self. When we recognize that memory is a story, not a prison, we loosen its grip. When we understand that clinging to what is gone is futile, we begin to release regret, resentment, and nostalgia. When we see that identity is fluid, not fixed, we stop defining ourselves by past wounds or roles. Practically, this letting go can be cultivated through mindfulness. When a painful memory arises, instead of suppressing it or indulging it, we observe it with awareness. We notice the feelings in the body, the images in the mind, the narratives that arise. We remind ourselves, this is only a thought, not the reality of now. We let it come and go, like clouds passing across the sky. Over time, this practice dissolves the chains of memory. This liberation does not mean we forget the past. Memory still has its place. It teaches us lessons, allows us to grow, and connects us with others. But the difference is in our relationship to it. We hold the past lightly, as something that once was, not as something that defines or confines us. We honor it without being bound by it. We free ourselves to live in the only place life ever happens, the present moment. And so, as we end this first exploration, let us pause. Consider what stories of the past you are still carrying. Notice the weight they place on your heart. Then breathe, and allow yourself to imagine what it would be like to set them down, to walk forward, unburdened. That possibility is not a fantasy, it is the gift of Buddhist wisdom. Before we continue to the next stage of this journey, I invite you to support this channel so that these teachings may reach more people who long for peace. If you found resonance in these words, please subscribe. It is a simple step that helps spread wisdom and healing to others. If the first step in freeing ourselves from the grip of the past is to understand the weight of memory and its binding nature, the second step is to deepen our awareness of the Buddhist teachings that provide insight into why clinging to the past is futile and how liberation arises from embracing impermanence and the truth of non-self. In this part of our journey, we turn more fully to the wisdom of the Dharma and explore how these timeless teachings illuminate the path toward living in the present. The past holds power only so long as we mistake it for something solid and permanent. We often treat memories and identities as though they are fixed monuments carved in stone, but the reality is that they are shifting sands, constantly reshaped by perception, emotion, and time. The Buddha pointed again and again to the truth of impermanence, anicca, as the very heart of reality. Everything that arises must pass away. All phenomena are conditioned. They come into being through causes and conditions, and they dissolve when those conditions change. To grasp what is impermanent as though it were permanent is to guarantee suffering, for we inevitably confront the truth of its passing. This is why clinging to the past causes such deep pain. We try to hold on to what has already dissolved. We resist reality, and in that resistance we suffer. Consider the simple example of a flower. In its blooming, it radiates beauty, but its beauty is inseparable from its impermanence. The petals will wilt, the stem will weaken, the flower will fade. To enjoy the flower while it is present is to live in harmony with impermanence. To cling to the flower and demand that it never change is to fight against the very nature of existence. Memory operates much the same way. A moment arises, lives and fades. To cherish it with gratitude is natural. To demand that it continue to exist is futile. Yet this is precisely what we do when we refuse to release the past. Impermanence does not only apply to pleasant experiences, it also applies to pain. When we are wounded by betrayal, loss, or failure, the sting feels eternal. But the Buddha's teaching assures us that no state, however intense, is unchanging. Sorrow, like joy, is impermanent. To recognize this is to soften our grasp on suffering. Instead of feeding it by retelling the story endlessly, we allow it to pass, just as clouds eventually dissolve into the sky. Many people fear impermanence because they think it robs life of meaning. If everything passes, what value can it have? But Buddhism turns this assumption on its head. It is precisely because things are impermanent that they are precious. The fleeting nature of a sunset, the brevity of a season, the fragility of life, these give rise to a deeper appreciation. If moments were eternal, we would take them for granted. Because they are transient, they invite us to be present, to savor them fully while they are here. To free ourselves from the past, then, is not to deny it, but to recognize that its impermanence makes it part of the flow of life rather than a prison. Connected with impermanence is the teaching of non-self, anatta. This doctrine often challenges modern assumptions, for we are accustomed to thinking of ourselves as enduring entities, stable identities that remain the same from birth to death. But the Buddha taught that what we call self is merely a collection of aggregates, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. None of these is permanent, and none constitutes a fixed essence. What we take as I is a process, not a substance. When we cling to the past, we often cling to a past self. We say, I was this kind of person, or this happened to me, and therefore I am this way. We bind our current being to an image of who we were, mistaking that image for a permanent truth. But the teaching of non-self liberates us from this. Just as the river is never the same from one moment to the next, so too the self is never the same. We are not the person we were yesterday, let alone the one we were years ago. To cling to a past identity is like trying to step into the same river twice. The waters have already moved on. When we see through the illusion of self, we begin to loosen the grip of past narratives. A trauma or failure may have marked us once, but it does not define us now. A role we once played, child, student, employee, lover, was real in its time, but it is not who we eternally are. We are dynamic, changing beings, arising moment by moment. This recognition allows us to meet the present freshly, unbound by rigid definitions. It also enables compassion, for if we are not fixed selves, then others are not fixed either. The person who once harmed us is also changing, also impermanent. Holding on to resentment begins to feel less necessary when we realize that both we and the other have already moved beyond the moment that caused pain. Impermanence and non-self are not abstract metaphysical concepts. They are lived realities. To practice them is to train ourselves to see each moment as new, each self as fluid, each memory as passing. This does not mean we erase memory. The Buddha himself remembered past lives and used memory as a tool for teaching, but he did not cling to memory as a prison. He remembered with wisdom, using the past to illuminate the present, not to overshadow it. We, too, can learn this art, to honor the past without being bound by it, to learn from it without replaying it endlessly. Meditation provides a practical way to internalize these teachings. When we sit in stillness and observe the breath, thoughts inevitably arise. Often they are memories, images of the past. Instead of engaging them, we observe them. We notice how they come, linger, and fade. This practice directly shows us impermanence. No thought remains forever. It shows us non-self. Thoughts arise on their own, not as possessions of an enduring I. With time, we begin to relate to memories differently. They lose their power to dominate, for we see them as passing phenomena rather than permanent truths. One of the Buddha's metaphors for the mind is that of a monkey leaping from branch to branch. Memory is one of those branches, and the monkey often swings back to it, replaying what has already happened. But mindfulness trains the monkey to pause, to settle, to rest on the branch of the present. This does not mean the monkey never touches memory again, but that it no longer leaps uncontrollably. Through discipline and awareness, we can guide our minds toward presence. The implications of impermanence and non-self reach beyond personal healing. They transform how we relate to society and culture. Much of collective conflict arises from clinging to past identities, national, ethnic, religious. Groups define themselves by historical narratives and cling to them as if they were eternal truth. Wars are fought over ancient grievances. Nations are divided by inherited resentments. The wisdom of impermanence and non-self invites us to loosen these rigid identities, to recognize that cultures and peoples, like individuals, are fluid and evolving. Liberation from the past at the collective level is as urgent as at the personal. To live in the present, free from the past, we must learn to dwell in impermanence with equanimity. This does not come naturally, for the human mind craves stability, but the Buddha's insight is that true stability comes not from clinging, but from releasing. The ground of reality is change itself. When we accept this, we discover a deeper peace, one that does not depend on holding on to anything but rests in the flow of now. This is not a resignation to chaos, but a harmony with the truth of life. It is like learning to surf the waves rather than trying to freeze the ocean. Practically, this shift can begin with simple exercises. When we notice ourselves dwelling on a past hurt, we pause and breathe. We remind ourselves this is no longer here. It has passed. We bring our attention to the sensations of the body, the feeling of the breath, the sounds around us. These anchor us in the present. Over time, the practice rewires our relationship to memory. The past may still arise, but it no longer enslaves us. Another practice is gratitude. Instead of clinging to the past with regret or nostalgia, we hold it with thankfulness. We say, "That moment was precious, and it has passed. I am grateful it occurred, and I release it." Gratitude honors impermanence without resisting it. It transforms the energy of memory from clinging to appreciation. There is also the practice of forgiveness. Resentment binds us to the past, but forgiveness loosens the chain. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting or condoning harm. It means releasing ourselves from the prison of carrying the wound. When we forgive, we acknowledge that both we and the other are impermanent, that both of us have changed since the moment of harm. This recognition frees us to live in the present rather than replaying the injury endlessly. As these teachings and practices take root, we begin to experience life differently. The present no longer feels like a thin slice between past and future, but as a vast, expansive space in which reality unfolds. We begin to taste the richness of now, the sensation of breath, the sound of wind, the presence of another person, the miracle of being alive. These are no longer overshadowed by regret or anticipation. We discover a quiet joy, not dependent on clinging, not threatened by change. This is the peace the Buddha called nirvana, not an escape from life, but a release into its deepest truth. In this way, impermanence and non-self are not sources of despair, but of liberation. They remind us that nothing binds us forever, that every moment is new, that we are not fixed by what has happened, but open to what is unfolding. To live in the present is to live in harmony with this truth, to walk freely without the chains of memory. And so, as we close this second exploration, let us pause again. Reflect on the moments of your past that still bind you. Notice how they feel in your body, how they color your present. Then gently remind yourself, these too are impermanent. You are not the same person who experienced them. You are here now, in this breath, in this moment, and this moment is wide enough to hold freedom. If you are finding resonance in these teachings and feel their value, I invite you once again to support this channel. Subscribing is a simple act, but it helps ensure that these messages of wisdom and peace continue to reach those who are searching for relief from suffering. Please subscribe now, and together let us continue to walk this path of presence and liberation. If impermanence and non-self reveal the futility of clinging to the past, it is mindfulness that provides the practical doorway into presence. Without practice, these teachings remain abstract. With practice, they become lived realities that transform every aspect of our being. Mindfulness, or sati in the Pali language, is at the very heart of Buddhist wisdom. It is the practice of remembering, of bringing awareness back again and again to the present moment, and of observing reality as it truly is without distortion, attachment, or aversion. To live in the present and free ourselves from the past is not something we achieve once and for all. It is a continual practice of returning, of noticing when the mind wanders and gently guiding it back. This discipline, when cultivated deeply, reshapes our relationship to thought, emotion, and identity. When we begin the practice of mindfulness, we are often surprised by how restless the mind is. Sit quietly for even a few moments, and the mind leaps into stories, memories of yesterday, plans for tomorrow, fantasies, judgments, all arise unbidden. This is the monkey mind the Buddha described, ceaselessly moving from one branch to another. Without awareness, we are carried along by this stream, dragged into the past, projected into the future, rarely resting in the present. Mindfulness interrupts this automaticity. It teaches us to become observers of the mind rather than captives of its wanderings. By noticing thoughts as they arise, we create a space between awareness and thought. That space is freedom. Imagine sitting in meditation and suddenly recalling a past argument with a friend. Without mindfulness, you are drawn into the memory, replaying it, fueling resentment, feeling again the heat of anger. Minutes or hours later, you realize you have been lost in thought. With mindfulness, however, you notice the thought as soon as it arises. Anger is present. You observe the sensations in the body, the tightening of the chest, the quickening of the heart. You label it gently, anger, anger, and let it pass. The memory no longer drags you backward, it becomes a passing phenomenon in awareness. This is the practical power of mindfulness. It turns what was once a prison into a cloud drifting across the sky. The Buddha taught that mindfulness is not merely about attention, but about right attention. It is not a cold awareness, but a clear, compassionate seeing. When we are mindful, we see reality without distortion, but we also hold it with kindness. This balance prevents mindfulness from becoming harsh or detached. Observing a painful memory with mindfulness does not mean repressing it or analyzing it endlessly. It means recognizing it as a thought, feeling its impermanence, and allowing it to move through us without clinging. Over time, this shifts our very identity. We no longer define ourselves by our memories or emotions. We see them as passing guests rather than permanent residents. The practice of mindfulness begins with the body. The Buddha often instructed his disciples to establish mindfulness of breathing. The breath is always present, always moving in and out, always available as an anchor. By bringing attention to the breath, we tether the mind to the present. When thoughts arise, we return gently to the breath. This simple practice, repeated countless times, trains the mind to rest in now. Over time, the habit of dwelling in the past weakens. The grooves of memory lose their grip because the mind learns a new groove, presence. Mindfulness also extends to sensations. When a painful memory arises, it is usually accompanied by sensations in the body, tension, heat, heaviness. Instead of fleeing these sensations or amplifying them with stories, mindfulness invites us to observe them directly. We sit with the tension in the chest, the knot in the stomach, the burning in the throat. We breathe into them, acknowledging them without resistance. This practice reveals another truth. Sensations, like thoughts, are impermanent. They rise, peak, and fade. To observe this directly is to see that even the grip of trauma or regret is not eternal. It passes when we stop feeding it. Another dimension of mindfulness is awareness of feelings and perceptions. When we recall a happy memory, for instance, we often grasp at it, wishing to recreate it. When we recall a painful one, we push it away, resisting its presence. Both grasping and aversion keep us bound. Mindfulness invites us to see feelings simply as feelings, perceptions simply as perceptions. We do not need to identify with them. We do not need to react to them. We let them come and go like waves rising and falling on the sea. The cultivation of mindfulness also extends beyond meditation into daily life. The Buddha emphasized walking meditation, mindful eating, mindful speaking. Every action can become an opportunity for presence. When we wash dishes, we notice the warmth of the water, the texture of the soap, the sound of plates clinking. When we walk, we feel the contact of feet with the earth, the rhythm of breath, the movement of muscles. When we speak, we notice the intention behind words, the tone of voice, the impact on others. This integration of mindfulness into everyday life gradually transforms how we live. The past loses its hold because every moment is filled with awareness. As mindfulness deepens, we begin to notice subtle patterns. We see how certain triggers pull us into the past, a song, a smell, a place. Instead of unconsciously reliving memories, we notice the trigger with awareness. We acknowledge this memory is arising, and we let it pass. This capacity is liberating. It breaks the cycle of being dragged into old stories. It allows us to relate to memory with wisdom rather than compulsion. There is a profound connection between mindfulness and compassion. As we observe our own suffering with awareness, we develop gentleness toward ourselves. We see how much we have been bound by memory, regret, and expectation, and we soften. This self-compassion extends naturally to others. We recognize that they, too, are bound by their pasts, caught in loops of memory. Instead of judging them, we meet them with understanding. Mindfulness thus becomes not only a personal liberation, but a source of healing in relationships. In the modern world, mindfulness has become a popular practice, sometimes stripped of its spiritual depth and turned into a tool for productivity or stress reduction. While these applications have value, the heart of mindfulness in Buddhism is liberation. It is not merely about calming the mind, but about seeing through delusion. The delusion is that we are our thoughts, that the past defines us, that the future controls us. Mindfulness reveals the truth. We are awareness itself, vast and free, in which thoughts arise and pass. This realization is transformative. It dissolves the chains of memory and projection, grounding us in the spaciousness of now. One of the profound insights of mindfulness is that the present is not a thin slice of time, but an infinite expanse. When we are fully present, even a simple moment, listening to a bird, feeling the breeze, tasting food, becomes vast and rich. The past and future fade, and what remains is a fullness that cannot be grasped or described, but only lived. This fullness is often obscured by our constant dwelling in memory, but mindfulness unveils it. The path of mindfulness is not without challenges. When we first practice, we may be overwhelmed by how much the mind clings to the past. Old wounds may surface, long-buried memories may arise. This is not a failure, but part of the process. The mind is revealing what has been hidden so that we can observe it with awareness and release it. With patience and perseverance, mindfulness becomes steadier, like a flame that no longer flickers in the wind. The Buddha compared mindfulness to a gatekeeper at the city gate. The gatekeeper does not fight with those who come or try to chase them away. He simply observes, noting who comes in and who goes out. Mindfulness is like this with thoughts and memories. We do not fight them, nor do we indulge them. We simply notice, this is arising, this is passing. In doing so, we keep the city of the mind free from invasion by unexamined stories. Over time, mindfulness transforms our relationship to time itself. We realize that the present is not something we achieve by erasing the past or denying the future. It is always here, waiting for us to return. The past and future are like shadows, real only in relation to the light of now. By resting in awareness, we see that the present moment contains all that we need. This recognition brings a profound sense of peace. Mindfulness also deepens our appreciation of life's fragility. When we are present, we notice the subtleties that are often overlooked. The smile of a loved one, the scent of rain, the softness of grass. These are fleeting, but in mindfulness they become treasures. We no longer take them for granted because we see their impermanence. This gratitude enriches our lives and makes the present moment radiant. For those carrying heavy burdens of the past, mindfulness offers a path of healing. Trauma, regret, and grief may not disappear overnight, but mindfulness teaches us to hold them differently. Instead of being submerged in them, we observe them. Instead of identifying with them, we see them as passing phenomena. This shift may not erase pain, but it transforms suffering. Pain may be inevitable, but suffering arises from clinging. Mindfulness loosens the clinging, allowing pain to move through without becoming a prison. As mindfulness becomes a way of life, it aligns us with the deepest truths of Buddhism. We see impermanence not as a concept, but as a lived reality. We see non-self not as an abstraction, but as a direct experience. We see suffering not as a punishment, but as a teacher that reveals where we are clinging. And we see liberation not as a distant goal, but as something available in every moment. We choose presence over distraction, awareness over automaticity. To live in the present and free ourselves from the past is not a slogan, but a practice renewed moment by moment. Mindfulness is the path, the method, the discipline that makes this possible. It is both simple and profound, requiring nothing more than attention, but yielding nothing less than freedom. As we draw this third exploration to a close, take a moment to reflect. Notice your breath, here and now. Feel the sensations in your body. Acknowledge any thoughts of the past that may arise, and let them pass like leaves floating on water. Rest in the spaciousness of this moment. This is the gift of mindfulness, the discovery that freedom is not elsewhere, not in some distant time, but here, now, in this breath, in this awareness. If these reflections speak to you, and if you wish to continue walking this path of presence together, I invite you to support this channel. Subscribing ensures that these teachings can continue to spread and reach others who long for peace and liberation. Please subscribe now, and let us continue this journey of awakening side by side. If mindfulness helps us anchor ourselves in the present and witness the impermanence of all phenomena, there is still another subtle challenge that must be addressed. The way the mind projects itself forward into the future, creating scenarios, fears, and expectations that never fully materialize as imagined. Just as clinging to the past keeps us bound to what has already dissolved, clinging to the future binds us to illusions that do not yet exist. Both directions, past and future, are forms of time travel in the mind, and both prevent us from resting in the only reality that is ever truly available, the present. To free ourselves from the past is incomplete if we do not also free ourselves from the compulsions of the future, and it is here that Buddhist wisdom offers profound guidance. The human tendency to project into the future is deeply ingrained. Evolutionarily, it may have developed as a survival mechanism, anticipating dangers, preparing for resources, planning for offspring. But in the modern world, where survival threats are not as immediate, this capacity has mutated into chronic anxiety and restlessness. Our minds spin endless scenarios. What if I fail? What if I succeed and lose it? What if others reject me? What if disaster strikes? The future becomes a realm of fear, and we inhabit it as if it were real, even though it has not arrived. This constant anticipation robs us of peace. We may be sitting in safety with food and shelter, yet our minds tremble with imagined catastrophes. We suffer not from reality, but from thought. The Buddha recognized this tendency. In his discourses, he often emphasized that craving and fear are rooted in our projections into what is not here. We crave future pleasures, fearing their loss even before they arrive. We dread future pains, suffering them in imagination long before they occur. In doing so, we double our suffering, once in imagination and again perhaps in reality. This is why he encouraged his disciples to rest in the present, to cultivate awareness of what is, rather than to be consumed by what might be. One of the most poignant teachings about the future comes from the reflection on death. Far from being morbid, this reflection is liberating. By remembering that death is inevitable, we are reminded that the future is uncertain and cannot be controlled. The exact time of our death is unknown. It could be in decades or in moments. To live in constant anticipation of a secure future is to ignore this reality. By facing death, we are called back to life, to live each moment as if it were precious and complete. This teaching dissolves the illusion that the future is guaranteed, urging us to awaken to now. Consider how often we delay our lives for the future. We say, "I will be happy when I achieve this," or "I will rest when I finish that," or "I will love more fully when circumstances improve." In doing so, we postpone living. The future becomes a carrot on a stick, always just out of reach. But when it arrives, it is not as imagined, and we set another condition. This cycle never ends, leaving us perpetually unsatisfied. Buddhist wisdom unmasks this delusion. Happiness and peace are not in the future, they are here, in the present moment. If we cannot find them now, we will not find them later, because later will also be now when it arrives. Mindfulness of the future means not erasing it, but holding it lightly. We can plan, we can prepare, but without attachment. The Buddha did not advocate irresponsibility. Farmers still plant crops, parents still care for children, communities still prepare for seasons. But the key is to act wisely without being enslaved by fear or craving. This balance is subtle but profound. It is the difference between preparing food with care and obsessing about whether we will starve, between saving resources with wisdom and hoarding out of fear, between setting intentions with clarity and being consumed by anxiety about outcomes. Another illusion of the future is the belief that it will rescue us from the dissatisfaction of the present. We imagine that when we have more money, more recognition, more love, then we will be at peace. But this is the trap of craving. The Buddha described craving, tanha, as the root of suffering, because it always projects fulfillment into a future that never arrives. When one desire is satisfied, another arises, and the cycle continues. Liberation comes not from fulfilling every desire, but from seeing through the illusion that desire will ever complete us. True peace is found not in the future, but in the cessation of craving, here and now. The future also binds us through fear. Fear of loss, fear of failure, fear of aging, fear of death. All these anxieties keep us restless. Yet, most of what we fear never comes to pass. We suffer in vain, imagining catastrophes that never occur. Even when difficulty does arise, it is rarely as we imagined. Often we find unexpected strength, support, or grace in the moment. Buddhist practice invites us to notice how much of our suffering is self-created through fear of the future. By observing this, we begin to loosen its grip. Meditation again becomes a practical tool. In meditation, we often notice thoughts of the future, worries, plans, daydreams. Instead of following them, we observe them. We say, planning, planning, or worrying, worrying, and return to the breath. This simple practice shows us directly that the future is a thought, not a reality. We see how it arises and passes like any other thought. This recognition weakens its power. The more we practice, the more we rest in the spaciousness of now, unburdened by imagined tomorrows. Another profound practice is cultivating trust. Trust does not mean believing everything will turn out as we wish, but trusting that whatever arises, we can meet it with awareness and compassion. This trust dissolves fear, because it shifts focus from controlling the future to being present with what is. The Buddha taught that suffering arises not from circumstances themselves, but from how we relate to them. By cultivating trust in awareness, we release the need to control outcomes. We learn to flow with life rather than to resist it. The teaching of dependent origination also sheds light on the illusions of the future. Everything arises through causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently. The future is not a fixed destiny waiting for us, but a flow of possibilities shaped by present actions. By acting with mindfulness and compassion now, we shape a wholesome future. But if we cling to controlling the outcome, we suffer. The paradox is that the best way to create a good future is to live fully in the present, because the future is born from now. By attending to this moment with care, we naturally plant seeds for the next. There is a deep connection between the illusions of the future and the weight of the past. Often, our fears of the future are projections of the past. We were hurt once, and we imagine we will be hurt again. We failed once, and we fear failure again. The mind uses memory to construct predictions, binding us in both directions. By releasing the past, we loosen the future as well. By seeing both as mental constructions, we return to the present, where life is free. Living free from the illusions of the future does not mean apathy. It means engagement with presence. It means loving fully now rather than waiting for the right moment. It means practicing generosity now rather than postponing until we have more. It means cultivating peace now rather than waiting for circumstances to align. In doing so, we discover that the present moment contains everything we were seeking in the future. It is not incomplete, it is whole. This shift also transforms relationships. Often we approach others with expectations about the future. This person should always be there for me, or this relationship must last forever. These expectations create pressure and disappointment. When we see the impermanence of all things, we learn to love without clinging. We cherish the presence of others without demanding they conform to our imagined future. This deepens intimacy because we meet people as they are now, not as we wish them to be. On a larger scale, societies too are trapped by illusions of the future, visions of progress, fears of collapse, dreams of utopia. While planning and striving can bring improvement, they also create endless dissatisfaction when the imagined future does not arrive. Buddhist wisdom invites cultures, like individuals, to balance vision with presence, to act wisely now rather than obsessing over distant outcomes. Ultimately, the future is an abstraction. It never truly arrives, because when it does, it is no longer the future but the present. This truth, simple yet profound, is the key to freedom. By recognizing that the future is always out of reach, we stop chasing it. We rest in now, and in doing so, we discover the peace we were seeking all along. As we draw this exploration to a close, I invite you to pause. Notice any fears or hopes you carry for the future. Feel their weight in your body. Then breathe and remind yourself, these are thoughts, not reality. The future has not yet come. What is real is this moment, this breath, this awareness. Here, now, you are free. If these teachings resonate with you, and if you feel their value, I encourage you once again to support this channel. Subscribing is a small action, but it helps spread wisdom and peace to others who are also searching for freedom from suffering. Please subscribe now, and let us continue this path together, step by step, moment by moment. To live fully in the present and free ourselves from the grip of the past and the illusions of the future is to awaken to the essence of Buddhist wisdom, liberation through awareness. The journey we have been tracing, from recognizing the weight of memory, to understanding impermanence and non-self, to cultivating mindfulness, to seeing through the illusions of the future, now comes to fruition in the lived experience of presence. But presence is not merely the absence of distraction, it is the presence of life in its fullest depth. When we live in the present, we discover a spaciousness that is not confined by time, a peace that is not dependent on conditions, and a joy that arises from the simple miracle of being alive. The present moment has often been called elusive, but in truth, it is the only reality that is ever available. The past is memory, the future imagination, but the present is lived experience. Yet we spend much of our lives absent from it, lost in thought, bound by craving, blinded by aversion. The Buddha's path is, at its core, a path of return, returning again and again to now, training the mind to rest in awareness rather than in stories. This practice reveals that the present is not a narrow point between two vast stretches of time, but an open field of freedom. In this field, we encounter life directly, without the veil of projection, without the chains of regret. To live in the present is to recognize that each moment is complete in itself. We often think of the present as a stepping stone, something to get through on the way to something better. But Buddhist wisdom teaches that the present is not a means, it is the end. This breath is not preparation for life, it is life. This sensation, this sound, this sight, they are not obstacles on the way to happiness, but the very texture of happiness itself. When we awaken to this, ordinary moments become extraordinary. Drinking a cup of tea, feeling the sun on the skin, listening to the laughter of a child, all become gateways to the infinite. This does not mean that the present is always pleasant. Pain, loss, and sorrow are also present realities. But when we meet them with awareness, they too become teachers. Instead of resisting pain or resenting sorrow, we allow them to be what they are. We breathe into them, acknowledging their impermanence. We see that even in difficulty, there is a presence that holds everything without judgment. This presence is the ground of compassion. By resting in awareness, we discover that we are larger than any single experience. We can hold joy and sorrow, pleasure and pain, without being overwhelmed. Living in the present also transforms our relationships. When we are fully present with another person, we offer them the greatest gift, our attention. In a world of distraction, presence is rare and precious. To listen without rehearsing responses, to see without judgment, to touch without distraction, these acts of presence create intimacy and healing. Often, conflicts arise not from what is said or done, but from the absence of presence. When we are lost in our own thoughts, we do not truly hear or see others. By returning to now, we meet others as they are, not as we imagine them to be. This deepens love, compassion, and understanding. The present moment is also the place where ethical action arises. The Buddha's path of right speech, right action, and right livelihood is not practiced in the abstract, but in the immediacy of now. When we are mindful, we notice the impulse to speak harshly and pause. We feel the temptation to act selfishly and choose otherwise. We encounter opportunities for generosity and respond with open hearts. In each moment, we plant seeds for the future, but we do so not with anxiety, but with presence. Our actions become aligned with compassion because they are not driven by clinging or fear. There is also a profound sense of liberation in realizing that the present moment does not need to be improved to be enough. Our culture often tells us that we must strive, achieve, acquire in order to be fulfilled. But Buddhist wisdom reveals that fulfillment is already here. When we stop chasing after what is not, we awaken to what is. This awakening brings a joy that is not dependent on circumstances. Whether rich or poor, healthy or ill, praised or blamed, we can find peace in the present. This peace is not passive. It is vibrant, alive, and free. The practice of living in the present is not always easy. The mind resists, craving the familiar stories of past and future. But with patience and discipline, the practice deepens. Meditation trains us to return again and again to the breath, to the body, to awareness. Each return is a victory, each moment of presence a taste of freedom. Over time, these moments string together, creating a life lived in awareness rather than in distraction. One of the profound fruits of presence is the dissolution of the illusion of separation. When we are lost in thought, we feel cut off from ourselves, from others, from the world. But in presence, we experience interconnection. We feel the breath not as my breath, but as part of the air we share with all beings. We hear the sound of a bird not as an object outside us, but as part of the symphony of life in which we participate. We see another person not as separate, but as another expression of the same reality. This recognition births compassion, for in presence we know that we are not alone. Living in the present also reshapes our experience of time. Instead of rushing through life, always on the way to something else, we slow down, we savor, we discover that a single moment can be vast. Time stretches, not because the clock changes, but because our awareness deepens. In this slowing, we find rest. The frantic pace of modern life softens, and we remember what it means to be human, to breathe, to feel, to be. Buddhist wisdom also points to the ultimate liberation that comes from presence, nirvana. Nirvana is not a place, but a state of being, the extinguishing of craving, the cessation of suffering. It is experienced in the present, not in some distant future. When we release clinging to past and future, when we rest fully in awareness, we taste nirvana here and now. This taste is subtle yet profound, a stillness that underlies all movement, a peace that is untouched by conditions, a freedom that is our true nature. To live in the present is in many ways to come home. We spend so much of our lives wandering into memory, into fantasy, into projection, that we forget where home is. But home is here, in this breath, in this body, in this awareness. When we return to it, we feel a deep sense of belonging, not because circumstances are perfect, but because we are aligned with reality. This belonging dissolves loneliness, for we realize that we are always held by the present. As we live more fully in the present, gratitude naturally arises. We see the gift of life not as something to be earned or postponed, but as something given in each moment. Gratitude transforms how we see the world. The ordinary becomes extraordinary, the simple sacred. We no longer wait for special occasions to feel joy. Every moment becomes an occasion. Gratitude also softens the heart, making us more generous, more compassionate, more open. This way of living does not mean we ignore the past or future. We can still learn from memory and plan for what is to come, but we do so with wisdom, not clinging. We hold the past lightly, the future gently, and rest in the present deeply. This balance allows us to live fully, without being enslaved by time. Living in the present also brings resilience. When challenges arise, we are not overwhelmed by fears of what might come or by regrets of what has been. We meet each difficulty moment by moment, breath by breath. This groundedness gives us strength. We discover that we can face anything, not because we control the future, but because we are present with what is. This resilience is a profound fruit of presence, a strength born of awareness. Ultimately, to live in the present and free ourselves from the past is to awaken to the truth of who we are, awareness itself. We are not the stories we tell, not the memories we replay, not the fears we project. We are the space in which all of these arise and pass. This awareness is timeless, untouched by past or future. To rest in it is to discover a freedom beyond measure. As we conclude this journey, take a moment to breathe. Feel the air entering and leaving your body. Notice the sensations of sitting, standing, or lying down. Allow your awareness to rest in this moment, without judgment, without clinging. This is presence, this is freedom, and it is always available, waiting for you to return. If you have walked with me through these reflections and found them meaningful, I invite you one final time to support this channel. Subscribing is a simple act, but it helps spread these teachings to others who long for peace, clarity, and liberation. Please subscribe now and let us continue to explore the path of wisdom together, moment by moment, step by step, presence by presence.